in the southwest of China, covering a total area of 486,000 square kilometers with 83 million population. Since the first reported cases of COVID-19 on January 16, a total of 539 cases have been confirmed in Sichuan, and only 3 deaths occurred. The case fatality in Sichuan is much lower compared with data reported in other areas. I would like to spend a few minutes to show you how we manage our severe COVID-19 cases in Sichuan province, analyzing the possible reasons for the lower case fatality. By using the national criteria combined with daily report system, we identified 81 severe cases. 95 of the patients were admitted ICU before or on the day when they diagnosed with severe. The duration from onset of symptom to diagnosis of severe condition was 9 days. The PF ratio is the most sensitive indicator to identify severe cases, which was 200 millimeters of mercury, while the reported PF ratios in other countries were much lower, around 150 on ICU admission, including early cases from Wuhan and from US and Italy. From the features of our severe patients, you could see that our patients were in a relatively early stage and not that severe as many of the data reported. So how could we solve the problems of lack of resources? Shortage of ICU beds is one of the most challenging issues in fighting severe COVID-19 globally. Despite very limited evidence reported in the literature, provisional ICUs may be a practical solution. By its establishment, the provisional ICUs, the critical care capacity for COVID-19 had a significant increase. The beds, organ support equipment, and staffs were arranged by the number of patients and adjusted over time by the government. Provisional ICUs were not comparable to standard ICU, but basic critical care, including main organ supports, could meet the majority needs of the patients. The figure showed the distribution of severe cases in Sichuan province. The 81 severe cases were distributed in 13 cities and 2 minority autonomous prefectures. Here we could see all these severe cases were centralized to the designated hospital for severe cases. As a result, mild and severe cases might be treated in the same ward in the provisional ICUs. Therefore, we classify the patients into different areas according to different levels of risk. ICU staffs and resources were allocated according to the disease severity, opportunity to benefit, and the treatment goal. As our severe patients were admitted early, conventional oxygen therapy, including oxygen therapy through nasal catheter or mask, is the most commonly used respiratory support methods, followed by non-invasive mechanical ventilation and high-flow nasal cannula. None of the patients need mechanical ventilation or ECMO on the first day they admitted to ICU. As a result, in the total period, conventional oxygen therapy was the most used respiratory support method, with more than 60% of patient needs, followed by high-flow nasal cannula and non-invasive mechanical ventilation. Other treatments include antivirus therapy, immunotherapy, antibiotics, and other support methods. As there is no effective antivirus drug to treat COVID-19, We think the possible reasons for lower case fatality rate is the multi-strategy management, including early identification, timely critical care, and establishing provisional ICUs. Thanks for your attention. I would like to see our experience might not be generalizable, as each country has their own policy and confront with different problems. However, we sincerely hope that our firsthand experience would be of help. And fortunately, we have colleagues from Wuhan. They went to the front line. Professor Ding and Dr. G, they went to Wuhan. They can share their experience in a later session. And also Professor Shi is from Guizhou province. He will also share his experience in Guizhou, where the epidemic is well controlled. Thanks. I'll give the time to Tammy. Okay.
So thanks for the sharing from Professor Shen Liao. So thanks for all the experiences and all the details informations. So then is Professor Ren Yuding. He is the doctoral specialist in anesthesia. And it's possible to mute your voice when because it will make some noisy. Okay, thank you, Yasir. And he is also the Deputy Director of Critical Care Department of the First Affiliated Hospital of China Medical University, the member of volunteer medical team to support Wuhan. Because you know, at this time, Wuhan is the center of the epidemic. So Professor Ren Yuding, he has the experiences to on site to support the Wuhan. So welcome, Professor Ding. Can you say hi to everybody?
Yeah, hi. Everyone.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to share my experience with foreigner friends and also my friends in China. Thank you, everybody. Okay. Yeah, okay. I will open my PPT.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Can you hear? Can you look this PPT, right? Okay.
Yeah, we can hear.
On February this year, I led a team of 150 staff from Liaoning to Wuhan to support the staff at Wuhan hospital. Our team oversaw wards 3 and 4, which contained a total of 80 beds. And these wards had been converted temporarily from ordinary wards to isolated wards for the treatment of the severely ill patients. Our team treated 129 severely ill patients, and more than half of patients are elderly people. And 109 patients had been discharged from the hospital when we leave Wuhan on 28 March. And 14 patients died. And ECMO and blood purification was performed in these cases. Yeah. This patient is the most severely patient, and he was complicated with pneumothorax, and ECMO was performed for 25 days. So his condition is very serious at the beginning, and with MODS and septic shock. And also the blood purification was also performed in this patient. And we are so proud of saving this patient. And actually, in the ward 3, five critical ill patients with mechanical ventilation, they all survived after our team their good job, I think. So this patient has been discharged in last month. So we are so happy. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So thanks for Professor Dean, because he has been enjoying this special period, and because that is a very dangerous time, but he is so brave and to do many on-site jobs during Wuhan. It's very proud, and that now Wuhan comes better, and almost most of the people come to normal and come back to the work. So
Tommy, right now it's 0 now. In Wuhan it's 0. There's no patient in Wuhan anymore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
0. After testing all the citizens in Wuhan, only 300 is RNA test positive. But no one was a patient with symptom, you know. These all these people are without clinical syndrome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is really a great job. All the doctors has been done. So thanks so much for all the sharing from Professor Dean.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. So next we go to the Professor Xianqing Shi. So he is the director of the Department of Intensive Medicine of Guizhou People's Hospital, and also the member of Chinese Society of Critical Care Medicine, and the member of Critical Nutrition section of the Chinese Society of Enteral and Parenteral Nutrition. So welcome, Professor Xianqing Shi. Is it possible you can say hi to everyone? Hi, Dr. Xianqing Shi. Hi. Is he come here?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm a colleague of the Dr. Shi. He is dealing with some emergency patient now. I'm sorry. So I will present my department to introduce the COVID-19 in Guizhou province. Thank you.
Okay. So you have any files to share, or just speaking?
Okay. Some COVID-19 patients will appear with cardiovascular problems, such as the bradycardia and hypertension. So we must pay more attention about the monitoring and the treatment about the cardiovascular problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because sorry to disturb you, because now we haven't go to the questions discussion period. Maybe yeah. How can I call you, Doctor?
Oh, sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Wu Jing. Yeah, I work in the Department of ICU in Guizhou Province.
Okay.
Hospital.
So,
yeah.
Nice to meet you, Dr. Wu. So it's possible to have a brief introduction about the situation of COVID-19 in Guizhou Province. Share some, just have a brief introduction and share some of your experiences. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
There is no patients in Guizhou Province detected the COVID-19 positive. And we have some experience in deal with COVID-19, especially in the cardiovascular problems. The most periods of the cardiovascular problem are the bradycardia and hypertension. And we have some questions to how to deal with the special problem about the hypertension and the bradycardia. We must pay more attention about to the monitoring and the treatment of the cardiovascular problems. Some medicals, some drugs maybe put into consideration to deal with the cardiovascular problem, such as vitamin C, such as coenzyme Q, and the sodium creatine phosphate. And we must monitoring the BNP and the TNI level. We must alert the explosive myocarditis. And how to management about the hemodynamics of the COVID-19. We must make out what's the patient's hemodynamics. We must choose some monitoring methods such as CVP, such as PICO, and the echo bedside. The volume, the heart function, and the vascular tensions must be monitored. And to the septic shock patients, the nephro is our first choice. And if the conventional treatment is useless, we must consider about the endocrine and some hormone. So that's our experience to deal with the COVID-19 patients with some hypertension and bradycardia.
Okay. Okay. So thanks so much for Dr. Wu's sharing. Dr. Peng Ji, she is the candidate attending physician at Department of Critical Care Medicine of Western China Hospital, Sichuan University. Also, she has been the member of volunteer medical team to support Wuhan, just like Professor Ding in Hubei. And she is also the certified physician of the Royal Canadian Medical Association. So welcome, Professor Peng Ji. Thanks for your participation. So is there any sharing you want to talking about, have a brief sharing about your experiences in Wuhan?
Not really. I just want to say, hi, Dr. Ding. Do you remember me? I still remember we worked in Wuhan together. The case you mentioned previously, I think we talked about it on MDT rounds a couple of times. So
thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm so happy the patient recovered nicely, and you did a really good job.
Yeah.
So good to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't have special to share with all of you guys, and I think we just talk some talk later.
Okay. Okay. So thanks for Professor Peng Ji. So then we can go the next part. Yeah. So this is hi, Professor Ali. Can you hear my voice? You can open your voice now.
Okay, I can hear you. Can you hear me also?
Hi, yeah, nice to see you. So, Professor Ali Kantali. He is from the Morocco, and he's the president of When Focus Morocco now. So is other guys can mute your voice because there is some voice here. Okay, thank you. And he's also the professor of anesthesiology and intensive care, the Mohammed University Rabat. This is the top one university in Rabat. And as you know, Morocco is a very beautiful city, attract all the guys from all over the world for the traveling here. And Rabat is their capital, and it's also a very beautiful city. So if there are any chance, our doctors, Chinese doctor, can visit here. Also, he is the head of emergency medical services, IBN Silla University Hospital Rabat. He will going to play a very important role during the special period of COVID-19. So welcome, Professor Ali.
Thank you very much. Do you want me to share the slides now or after the speaker presentations?
Yeah, you can have your sharing now.
Okay. So can you see the slides?
Yeah, we can see it very well.
Okay, so thank you for the very kind introduction. I confirm that Morocco is a very beautiful country, and we have a lot of Chinese friends who come regularly to Morocco to visit. But unfortunately, since the beginning of the pandemic with travel restrictions, we don't see any tourists no more. But we hope that at the end of the pandemic, we will see them again. So. I will try to give you a brief update of the situation actually in Morocco. We'll go straight to the numbers. We had our first case documented 3 months ago on the 2nd day of March, and since then actually we had 8,437 positive cases. My numbers are from yesterday at 6 o'clock, which from which 7,493 have recovered, and 210 were dead, which leaves us today with 944 active cases. And obviously the number of positive cases raised over time, but there is actually a trend of really slowing down, as you can see in the daily new cases chart. After the peak we had during the early May, late April, early May. Since a month ago now, for the last month, we had a drastic decrease in daily new cases. Another chart about active cases, deaths and recovery. As you can see on the green line, the recoveries represent more than 90% of the total cases. And as I said, for a month now, the active cases, the number of active cases has dropped dramatically. And about the death, as you can see, we had a very low number of deaths from the beginning. What about the severe patients which needed to be admitted in ICU? So the issue was our main fear at the beginning of the pandemic. We were afraid to see cases as we've seen in France, in Italy, and other countries. So after the first peak we had during the first month, we had up to 100 patients admitted in ICU. There was a really important drop in daily admissions. Actually, we are closing a number of ICU COVID units because of the lack of patients. And even the patients, most of the patients actually in ICUs are old patients admitted more than a month ago. And I think for today, we have something like 15 patients in ICUs for COVID-19 in the whole country, which is very low. This trend is also true for the daily new death. As you see, after the first peak that we had more than a month ago for the first month, now for more than a month, we have less than 1 death per day, which is very, very low. And if you have a closer look of the lethality rate, it gets even better. As you can see, for the first month in the first 2,500 patients, the mortality rate was comparable to other countries, around 5%. But if you consider only the last 2,500 patients admitted in the last month, this lethality rate drops under 1%, which is really low. So how are we doing compared to other countries? I think this pandemic is the only topic where we are proud as a country to be far behind lots of other countries in terms of deaths per million, which is near to zero. In terms of total cases, in terms of serious or critical cases, these numbers seems to say that we nearly won this war. So how did we do it? I think there are 3 answers to these questions. From the beginning, we made a choice. It was health over economy. We have a very early restrictive policy, which was early border shutdown, early declaration of state of health emergency, early lockdown policy, and most importantly, mandatory wearing of face mask. I suppose that in China, it's normal to wear a mask, but trust me, it was difficult at the beginning in our culture to convince people that they have to wear masks. And we invested a lot in masks. We didn't suffer from lack of masks as other countries. For that, entire textile factories were converted into mask production. We went from 0 to 5 million masks produced locally a day. And most importantly, they were cheap masks. Actually, the Moroccan masks cost less than 10 US cents per mask. It's not the cost of production, it's the cost for the citizen. For example, it's 10 times cheaper than in countries like France. The second explanation is scientific. We had from the beginning involvement of all medical societies, from which the society that I belong to, and they made a very big effort to guide the doctors on what to do during the pandemic. So we produced a very huge number of recommendations covering nearly every topic of the pandemic: how to answer the phone, how to admit people to emergency, how to do triage, how to use ultrasound, how to treat. So if you're interested on these recommendations, they're all in this website. And the last measure was medical, and it was based upon 3 principles: early diagnosis, early isolation, and early treatment. For the early diagnosis, even though at the beginning we couldn't perform as much tests as we wanted, you can see that we increased this number over time, and actually I think we're over 300,000 tests performed. The second principle is early isolation. So per order of the authorities, all the confirmed or suspected patients were confined immediately, either in hospitals, hotels, or at home. And each one had a very detailed investigation about contacts. And these contacts were isolated at home for 14 days. And the last association was early treatment. So we took a bet. Was it a good bet? I don't know. But we treated everybody with the available treatments. It was not a purely scientific choice. It was a realistic choice. We treated everybody with hydrochloroquine and azithromycin as the first line treatment, and lopinavir ritonavir as the second line treatment. When I say everybody, it's every positive patients, even asymptomatic, and even the symptomatic contacts. So this can seem controversial, view the actual international context, but I think that it works. Was it this treatment that works? Was it the mask? Was it, I don't know what else we did, but that what I can say for sure is that something worse. That's the association of all we did resulted in a drastic drop in lethality rate and an increase in recovery. So my message is that we were realistic. We did what we could with the means we had, and it seems that we're actually winning, and I hope we will win the last phase, which is the return to normal life, which is actually ongoing. Thank you for your attention.
Okay. Thanks so much for all the information. Actually, it's very impressive about all the data because Morocco is very near to European countries like French and Italy, and they're very, very serious, the situation here. But when we look at the Morocco data, it's really impressive because the Morocco government and also your health and medical system really done very quick response and quick actions about all the situations. So I think that's also all the... Bonjour, professeur Bonancy, vous pouvez offrir votre son.
Bonjour tout le monde.
Bonjour. Ok, enchanté. Vous pouvez écouter mon son maintenant?
Vous m'écoutez?
Vous pouvez m'écouter mon son? Okay. So I will have a brief introduction about Professor Bonasil Yassil. He comes from Algeria. Algeria also has a very close relationship with China, and we have a long history during the cooperation. Also, when the beginning of the epidemic, Algeria government have to give Chinese government a big support about the masks and something like this. So Professor Bonasil, he is the professor and the director of anesthesiology department, the professor in intensive care, and the head of intensive care unit at Mouloud Mamere University in Tissouz. This is the top one university hospital in Tissouz, Algeria. And also he is the member of local committee of anti-infection. Also, he will also play a very important role during this COVID-19 period. So, bienvenue, welcome, Professor Bonasil. Bienvenue. Oui, vous avez aucune expérience contre le COVID-19? Vous pouvez parler un peu et on peut vous faire la traduction.
Bonjour.
Oui.
En fait, nous, on a une certaine expérience par rapport à la prise en charge du Covid. Donc, à notre niveau, on a hospitalisé 204 patients depuis le mois de mars jusqu'au mois de, on va dire jusqu'à aujourd'hui, le 10 juin. Donc, on a eu 20 décès en réanimation, c'est-à-dire une admission qui va avoisiner les 10% de la prise en charge globale des patients au niveau de notre hôpital. Et puis, par rapport à notre expérience, on a également constaté que le protocole à l'hydroxychloroquine a donné on va dire, de bons résultats par rapport à la prise en charge globale de nos patients.
Ok, d'accord. D'accord. Et Youssef, est-ce que vous êtes là, Youssef?
Pardon?
She is the and the Professor Senhaji will represent her tonight. Professor Senhaji, could you open your voice and the video? Can you hear my voice, Professor Senhaji? C'est possible d'offrir votre son et votre vidéo. Est-ce que vous pouvez m'écouter?
Wait a moment, please.
Okay, okay. So nice to see
you. And yeah. Me. Okay. I don't know. I speak very bad English.
Okay, it's okay.
I will try to speak with in French if you
Okay, it's no problem. Yeah, Joseph will help us. Joseph, our partnership from Tunis, il va vous aider faire la traduction.
Très bien.
Okay.
Très bien.
So I will have a brief introduction about Professor Shuisha and Professor Senhaji. He will represent Professor Shuisha this time. Professor Shuisha, she is the professor and the director of anesthesiology department and the professor of critical care department. Also the head of the intensive care unit at the Ben Laouda Hospital and University Center of Oran in Algeria. Also, this is the top one university hospital in Oran, and the head 10-year of Department of Intensive Care Service. So welcome, Professor Senhadi.
Oui.
Il va faire le.
Oui.
Hi.
Oui, bonjour.
Hi. Nice to see.
Second hi.
Yeah. So Professor Hamlish, he is the head of medical resuscitation department of establishment University Hospital in Oran, and he is the Class A lecturer of Hospital University. Also, he is the leader of medical laboratory research team of Oran Medicine Faculty, Oran University Ahmed Ben Bella. This time, he will have a detailed introduction about the situation in Algeria. So, hi, Professor, vous pouvez partager votre présentation. Merci.
It's okay? It's okay?
It's okay. On vous écoute, professeur Hamlish.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Dear colleagues, dear friends around the world, good morning from Oran, from Algeria. I would like to start thanking Medcaptain for honoring me with this invitation. Thank you, Tammy. I'm pleased to present to you a brief situation in Algeria and our experience in our hospital establishment of Oran. The COVID-19 epidemic arrived in Algeria 2 months after the initial outbreak in Wuhan in China, and 1 month later than the first case in Europe on 12th January. We had given the stakeholders additional time to prepare so that the national medical media planning for surveillance, alert health, awareness, and community stay system has been activated since January. The preventive action taken were mainly social distancing, movement restriction, quarantine, and lockdown. And you see all sports or universities and worship places were closed. It was recommended to adopt good hygiene habits to maintain distance of last 1 meter between people outside. And I must tell that no restriction were given in the beginning to incite ordinary people to wear medical masks outside hospitals. Then other preventive action, restrictions of international flights to Morocco, to China, to France, suspended public transport, and began containment implementation, lockdown and ban of movement to and from Blida. Blida is the first town of COVID, and partial containment in Algiers and Oran from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. The first confirmed case was in Blida. It's east of, west of Algiers, the capital of 13 or 14 kilometers. The first death were in 29 on March 29. In Oran, our first case was confirmed on 24 March, and the first date on March 29. Well,
okay.
Algeria is ranked 57th in the world with 10,382 cases and 724 deaths. You see here in the curve of daily new cases, and this is our June 7th. We observed the peak on the first week of April. The peak of cases and the peak of deaths. Here we observe symptom frequency observed in young people between 25 and 39 years age. Here we see we observe continuous increase until today the case of incident cases and cumulative death. The most symptom was cold, fever, and asthenia in major people, and medical history was especially for hypertension and diabetes in 50%. Like all the countries, when we see what happened in China and Italy and Italy and France and Europe, we prepare and organize for receiving patients, especially of COVID. Here is the service of medical resuscitation with 40 beds. And you see here individual protection equipment and monitoring central. Well, evolution of medical support of our patients, it's two periods. The first period from March 24 until 12 April. We have not experienced, and the first time, we consider all patients who arrive with hypoxemic COVID hypoxemia are intubated for saturation of oxygen less than 92 for 6 liter oxygen. They intubated, and mechanical ventilation was begun with 8-point ratio PaO2 FiO2 up of 115. In this first period, we admit 9 patients. We have a lot of complications such as insuffisance, renal failure, liver failure. We do hemodialysis and hemodiafiltration for 6 patients, and 4 patients dead in infection of BMR, bacterial resistance. Let me, my English is not very good, you excuse me. Yeah. Okay, from April 12, we changed the strategy after the new information coming from the experience of the Italian colleagues, and we favorize non-invasive ventilation for all patients when oxygen saturation was less than 92% under 6 liters of oxygen therapy. Until today, we hospitalize 41 patients. My colleague in the other hospital, Dr. Sanhaji, tell us today we have 10 patients, but not intubated. All are on non-invasive ventilation. For the patient, we in this period 25 for on an IV, 5 are failed and are intubated and dead. We have extubated the first patient last 10 days, the first, because we changed our strategy of ventilation. We have until today 12 recovered patients outcome from intensive care. So our strategy were to use non-invasive ventilation for all patients when SpO2 was less than 92. If the saturation was less than 19, or with RR, respiratory frequency, respiratory rate of breath is more up of 25, they are intubated, and we began mechanical ventilation.
Oui, professeur Hamlish, merci beaucoup parce que le temps est limité.
D'accord,
oui.
Je dois passer au moins les slides comme ça.
Okay.
Here with Sipa Businac with swimming mask of Decathlon.
Okay.
Donc, he is recovered after 9 days, and here a patient is here for 8 days, and you see when we make an IV, there is SpO2 more than 90. Thank you very much.
Okay, merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Okay, thanks for the sharing from the Professor Hamlish. So we'll go to the major part of this forum for the second part, for the questions discussion.
Yes.
Okay, so thanks for your the listening. So for these questions, for all these questions, Professor Xue Liao, she will give all the details and share her experiences about all the questions. So Professor Xue Liao, you can have your questions here.
Okay, thanks for your introduction. Because I consider about the obstacle of language, so I prepare slides for this question.
Okay, thank you. I will stop my sharing. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Yes, can you see it?
Yes, we can see. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
As for the questions about respiratory support, I would like to give you a brief introduction of the Chinese national guidelines for COVID-19. The guidelines have been updated to the 7th version since the outbreak in December 2019. Now, experts are working on the 8th version as the and I know the guidelines have been translated into English version now. I see the slides from Professor Hamish. Yes, I think everyone has their own protocol. According to the Chinese guideline, we select different respiratory support methods according to recommendations. The recommendation is easy to perform by using a PF ratio directed therapy. When the patient PF ratio is between 200 and 300, conventional oxygen therapy is recommended as the first-line therapy. For patients with PF ratio between 150 to 200 millimeters of mercury, non-invasive mechanical ventilation or high-flow nasal cannula is preferred as the initial treatment method. For patients with PF ratio less than 150, invasive mechanical ventilation should be put on early and start with non-protective mechanical ventilation. Then the patients need to be monitored closely and evaluated if there's an improvement. If there's no improvement within 1 to 2 hours, a higher level of respiratory support methods should be considered and implemented without delay. The guidelines also had the recommendation for initiation of ECMO, but I do not want to take too much time to go through it because the indications were similar as other ARDS. As for the PEEP titration, it is the same as the traditional ARDS, either by incremental or decreasing method, etc. We prefer to choose the optimal compliance method to select the PEEP. For the driving pressure, it is recommended to limit it within 15 centimeters of water for traditional ARDS. However, it may not be applicable for critical COVID-19 cases with extremely poor compliance. When we try to limit the driving pressure, the pressure of carbon dioxide would increase significantly in some critically ill patients. Therefore, we think we need more data about the driving pressure, the role of the driving pressure. Thanks, that's for my opinion for the question. That's all, thank you.
Okay, thanks for the patience and sharing from Professor Shenliao. So Professor Hamlish and Professor Bonocel, est-ce que vous avez aucune de questions pour cette partager? Oui.
Yes. We change our strategy. We don't treat the RDS like the conventional RDS. I explain. The endpoint, the objective of PF under 150, we don't see it. We use saturation or PaO2 under if is up 16, if up 60, it's okay. We don't intubate because all intubated patients are difficult to manage. We have not ECMO. So we push the NIV a longer time is possible. Understand? And when intubate patient, we for looking for driving pressure is more less than 15, we consider like RDS. And if compliance is higher of 40, we treat like conventional RDS with prone and high PEP, low tidal volume. Okay, but the endpoint, we change the endpoint, not the PF of 115. We use ISV ventilation, you know, adaptive spontaneous ventilation. And we have the first extubate patient. We have success, but we see after.
Yeah. So, Professor Chanel, yeah.
他是不是在问我问题啊？
对，他在问你问题。
OK，
你可以再问一下。
OK, I think there are some different opinions about the intubation, the timing of the intubation. I think, but from our opinion, we think in the early cases in Wuhan, the mortality rate is much higher. You know, the mortality rate is more than 10% in Wuhan in early period, and we compare the data from Sichuan and other provinces where the mortality rate is much lower. The experience is that early suitable oxygen support method is very important. We couldn't postpone the mechanical ventilation or non-invasive mechanical ventilation. So in the 7th version of the guidelines, we recommend give the 2 hours monitoring time. Whatever method you used, if the patient improve, you can continue use it. If the patient didn't improve or worsened, you have to yes, change it to the higher level of respiratory support method. And my colleague Ji Peng went to Wuhan, and she can also share her experience, because the patient they managed much severe than the patient in Sichuan. Please, Ji Peng.
Okay, I understand. Yes. Okay.
So Professor Holmes, c'est clair pour la question?
Oui.
Okay.
Oui, je comprends qu'il y a des recommendations, guidelines.
Okay.
And, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So Professor Shenina, Professor Holmes, he said he understanding very well. Thanks so much for your explaining. Okay. So we'll go to the next question part. Yeah. Wait a minute. So, Professor Ding, Professor Ren Yu Ding, is you here? You can open your voice. Okay, thanks. So for these questions, Professor Ding will have experience. You have any files wants to share, or you just speaking by yourself?
Yeah, okay. I think time is limited. So I want to answer the questions 3 and 4. Okay.
Okay.
So I will share my. So firstly, I want to share my experience in Wuhan. Yeah. Just after after listening the lecture of the Xulian, I think I totally agree with her. Yeah. For the at the beginning, many people, you know, in Wuhan, many people because there were no enough machine for the patient, so the mortality were high at the beginning, but after the mechanical ventilation supplied enough and the mortality, I think is really very useful for the critical ill patients. Okay. I will share the.
Okay, I stop my share. You can have your share.
Okay, this one. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So here I want to share my experience in Wuhan, and the question is what kind of patient should be admitted in ICU. You know, yeah. I think the first one is early identification of high-risk patients is very important. In our experience, the difference between COVID-19 and influenza is that a higher proportion of patients with COVID-19 might progress from mild to severe in absence of early treatment. So the early identification of high-risk patients and preventing a progression from severe to critical illness have become the key to reduce the mortality associated with COVID-19. And the second is classification management of patients, because the large number of the critical ill patient, but the serious shortage of medical staff. So we adopt a strategy involving the hierarchical management of the severely and critically ill patients, and focus our limited resource on the treating patients most in need of care. So we and for the critical ill patients, actually they need require the close monitoring by the ICU staff. You know, for the severe cases, we also subdivide based on the long CT finding according to the characteristics of the COVID-19. The patients who long CT results indicated recovery, whose lesions had not progressed extensively, and such patients, I think they can be monitored regularly. But for the patients who exhibited significant disease progressing, as indicated by a wide range of lesions on CT or the observation of significant progression between the two long CT scans, such patients were subjected to close monitoring. And there are many elder patients. So for such patients, I think they were required intensive care, even when serious lesions were not detected on long CT. And this management strategy enable us to provide focused care to high-risk patients and greatly ease the problem of efficient medical staff. And also, we encourage patients in coverage stage and those with relatively mild syndrome to share rooms with elder patients and help them care for them. This strategy has achieved good results. So here is our experience in Wuhan. And also we set up the mini ICU in the isolated ward. And I think this management strategy was really very useful for Wuhan because many patients at that time. So we have to do like this, yeah. But I know, yeah, in North Africa, I think all of you do the good job. I really, yeah, because your prevention and control strategy is very good, and the pandemic had been controlled in your country. So I think maybe your the ICU word is enough in your country. So that's really good. So for the second question is so sorry. Another question yeah. for this one, chloroquine, right? This question, I think yeah, I have said just now. One professor had shared their treatment, including the chloroquine in COVID-19. So I want to share some papers. Yeah, I think this knowledge I think is familiar with you. Yeah. I also reviewed some papers. I think in conclusion, I think yeah. So first, let's look at the possible mechanisms of this drug, antiviral. So chloroquine can inhibit the entry of the SARS into the cell, yeah, by interfering with ACE2, and they also can incorporate into endosome and lysosome, resulting in increased pH of the intracellular compartment. So they can inhibit the viral replication and propagation. So there are also some clinical evidence for the chloroquine for prevention and the treatment of COVID-19 in human. But I think the evidence is still limited, and also we know that one paper published in Lancet had withdrawn because the author were unable to prove the reliability of the original data. So, but this paper report that the chloroquine alone or in combination with macrolides was not benefit to the COVID-19 patient. So some other paper, most of the paper I think have similar results. So to date, there are no studies of chloroquine as treatment of COVID-19 that are adequately powered to demonstrate efficiency or the absence of the harm. But we should pay attention to the adverse effect of chloroquine. And the most common adverse events are gastrointestinal syndrome. And there are also some severe or life-threatening complications, such as the QT prolongation or the risk of ventricular arrhythmias. So much for the two questions. I think, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the sharing from Professor Ding. It's very impressive because at that time Wuhan is a very severe area, and Professor Ding has been stay here with his team during this very hard time. And thanks a lot for all their work. That's the work. Hi, Professor Dr. Wu, are you still here?
I'm here. Yeah. I'm here.
Okay, thank you. So I'll show you the questions respond for the Dr. Okay. So you can see the presentation here, all the questions details here.
Yes.
Okay.
The time is limited, so I will answer the questions briefly.
Okay.
For the first question, how to deal with COVID-19 pneumonia patients with cardiovascular problems? Our answer are listed as follows. Some of the COVID-19 patients will appear with cardiovascular problems, such as bradycardia or the hypertension, as I mentioned before. So we must pay more attention to the cardiovascular monitoring and treatments. For example, if the patient's cardiac is damaged with myocarditis, so we consider use some drugs protect our heart, such as sodium creatine phosphate, vitamin C, and coenzyme Q, and some polarization liquid such as potassium and magnesium. We monitor the levels of BNP and TNI every day, and a lot of the acute explosive myocarditis. Then how to manage the acute hemodynamics of the COVID-19. First, we must according to the details of the patient's hemodynamics, choose the proper monitoring methods, such as the CVP, the non-invasive PICO or the PICO, the bedside echo, and so on, to confirm the cause of the disease, such as the volume, the heart function, or the vascular tension, or the blood vascular tension conditions. We deal with the cause of the disease. To the septic shock patients, the nephro is our first choice. If the conventional treatment is useless, we must pay more attention to the endocrine condition or the acid-base balance. For the resuscitation of the fluid, we choose the crystal liquid or the colloid liquid, especially artificial colloid, such as abdomen and plasma. We use the volumetric load test to make sure the liquid treatment is good for the patient or not. Because unless more liquid infusion may increase the ARDS or the pulmonary edema and cause more severe outcomes. What about the blood purification for the COVID-19? We think if the patient has symptoms with progressive decline of oxygen index or the increase of the inflammatory medias or the shock or the damages in important organs, the blood absorption, plasma exchange, or the blood perfusion, blood purification are all very useful. The mode of our blood purification used most of the absorption, plasma exchange, and plasma perfusion. That's for the first question. And the second question is how to detect with common persons or the persons working in the hospital, what's the meaning? So for the very important persons, the close contact, the persons from abroad, or the persons working in the hospital, especially in the fever department, the nurse, the doctors, we must detect all the people using pharyngeal swab or the nasal swabs to test their nucleic acid or the antibodies in their blood. For the other people or the common people in our cities, if the persons have the willing or the volunteer to have the test, they can to be screened with in the hospital, but they must pay the fees. House is positive in the nucleic acid. We must report to our government or the CDC and isolation the patient or to send them to the hospital. We must find out the symptoms patients, especially no symptoms patients must be isolation. That's our answers. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. We answer the questions. Okay. Okay, thanks to Dr. Wu for all the explaining about all the questions. So at the time, we are going to break about the lecture question. So Dr. G, are you here? Can you hear me?
Yes.
So this is our last part about the question.
Not this slide.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, I can stop now.
Can you see the slides right now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think the first question is about the application of lung ultrasound. So in our experience, we think lung ultrasound may promote rapid screening and early diagnosis of COVID-19 at community hospitals. Secondly, it helps early select patients with COVID-19 pneumonia who need to transfer into high-level or designated hospitals. Thirdly, we think the critical care ultrasound can be used to evaluate the therapeutic effects and alert for early ICU admission, because we always mentioned early ICU admission and early identification. So we think it's very important. Fourthly, we think lung ultrasound is useful to identify ARDS and help us to understand the physiology. It helps us to identify which patient should be appropriate for probe position. We don't recommend proposition for everyone, but we truly think some of them, they can be benefit from prone. So I think lung ultrasound is help us to identify who maybe can benefit from that. The last one I want to say is not only lung ultrasound, but also critical care ultrasound, including circulation, kidney, and GI function evaluation. All of them are very important because when we are in the isolation ward, it's very difficult to use stethoscope or do the full physical exam. But ultrasound is it's easy, time-saving, real-time, a real-time tool to help us to understand the physiology. So we use it in Wuhan very broadly. It helps us a lot. And also I have a slide. It tells us the classic ultrasound signs. Here's a CT, and this are the relative changes on the ultrasound. And basically, we think it's A line, B line, and AB sign. We call that AB sign because it's not diffuse B line change. It more look like focalized B lines, and also some small nodules at subpleural space. So we think the lung ultrasound is very useful, or critical care ultrasound is very useful. I think the second question is about the AKI and the thrombosis topics. So to be honest, we still don't fully understand who is vulnerable, why some patients are affected so severely, why it comes on so rapidly, and why it is so hard for someone to recover. However, we think it's a disease that affects the body from head to toe, almost everywhere. So in terms of AKI, the reported incidence is around 0.5% to 2.4%. I think the mechanism mainly including primary and secondary injuries by the virus. Firstly, the viral particles were identified from the biopsy in one study. So I think to some of the patients, the direct viral attack is still a possible mechanism. But I think the most of the patients, they got AKI from the secondary injuries. Here is a very good review. It tells us it's probably from cytokine damage, organ crosstalk, and systemic effects. It's like all of the critical care illness. It's nothing specific. So this is about the AKI. And I think we did a lot of, not a lot, but some CRT and ECMO treatment in Wuhan. I think for some of them, it's very important. Another thing, I think the early fluid management is very important. So we restrict the fluid, we manage the fluid very aggressively. We like to make the patient more negative balance, and we use ultrasound to evaluate the fluid status every day. I think it helps us a lot. But we are still at the beginning and we're still learning. I don't think we fully understand the disease nicely, and we're still on the way. And in terms of the thrombosis, I think it's again, the mechanisms are more likely related to the indirect injuries or secondary injury, including the inflammation response and the ciliary dysfunction, the secondary infection, pulmonary microthrombo formation, intravascular coagulopathy, myocardial injury, and increased cardiac biomarkers. And I think there is a good paper on JACC. It's a review. It summarized the thrombosis-related issues in COVID-19. And in this review, it demonstrated that the venous thrombosis, arterial thrombotic events, And also other coagulopathy can be seen in these patient groups, like this table. I think there is something we should be evaluated in cautious, like in this study. It's a retrospective review from 2 hospitals in China. The mortality is has very good coping with the level of D-dimer. I think it's a very good marker to help us to identify which patients are more severe and which patients have very high risks to gut a deterioration. So, and also in another article, I think the study is in Spain. It showed us almost 1/3 of patients have pulmonary embolism, even they are fully anticoagulated. I don't fully understand the mechanism, but I think the PE is something should be evaluated in cautious. Also in Wuhan, we I think probably 4 of our patients got PE. So since then we got very good awareness of that. We do early identification and early anticoagulation for almost everybody, and monitor the D-dimer level and DIC level almost every couple of days. So I think that is extremely important, and all of the ICU physicians should be evaluated in cautious. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the presentation in detail. So Dr. Ali, Professor Ali Kintali, have you any questions about this part? Hi, Professor Ali Kintali, are you still here? Okay.
I'm still here.
Yeah. Hi. Hi. Yeah. So about this part, do you have any thoughts or questions?
Just a little remark about ultrasound, because we really use ultrasound, especially hemodynamic and lung ultrasound for a long time now, long before COVID. And in my own experience during this COVID outbreak, is a very, 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 and I repeat it on purpose, useful tool, especially in low outcome hospitals. And I want to ask why in worldwide it's not that used, because a lot of people don't believe in it, don't use it. And as Dr. G said, it's useful in every field, for the emergency setting, in the ICU. It's I think nobody who treats COVID-19 now can treat this patient without ultrasound, especially severe patients, because in ventilated patients you can't perform CT scans 3 times a day. But for lung ultrasound, you can do it 100 times a day. It's no problem. So my question is, why isn't it used enough worldwide? Apart from China and some other countries, people don't use it.
I think that is a very good question. And I think ultrasound is a technique dependent. It's not every physician, you can use ultrasound nicely if you don't understand the physiology. So we're not the sonographer, we're the physicians. Firstly, you should have the knowledge of ultrasound. Secondly, you should have the knowledge of your patient, and you should combine everything together. So I don't think like the echo physicians, they can do the ultrasound 3 times a day and treat the patient nicely. I think firstly, you need to be a good ICU physician, then you use the tool to help you to guide the treatment. Secondly, I think ultrasound should be used earlier, because in the later stage, the lung ultrasound is almost the same. Everybody looks like the ARDS, the A line, B line everywhere, but it just tells you maybe some patients have some consolidation. You should do prone or something. But I think the early ultrasound use will help us to identify who are the more serious patients who are sick. So I think the ultrasound should be used should be recommended to the physicians more widely. I think probably we should train the physicians from the, even if they are in the medical school or somewhere. Yeah, especially in this COVID-19 epidemic, I think ultrasound technique is extremely, extremely important, because we cannot touch the patient nicely, we cannot feel the patient, we cannot even use stethoscope. So ultrasound just tell me, sometimes I feel ultrasound just tell me everything about the patient. Should I give the fluid or not? Should I give inotropics or not? Should I prone the patient or not? So I just use it very broadly. Yeah, this is my opinion.
I totally agree with you.
Okay.
I'm happy.
Okay. Okay. So thanks for the excellent discussion during this part. So then it's almost at the end of the forum. Thanks all the times and patience for all the doctors. So Professor Xuenian Liao and Dr. Ali will have a brief introduction, a brief summary about today. Each will have a brief, so Professor Xuenian Liao, so is it possible you have a brief summary about today? Thank you.
Okay, it is a wonderful night for me, because I know a lot, both from colleagues from China and North Africa. It is also moved that we, both of us are on the way of success in the battle of fighting COVID-19. And I want to say that because I work in Sichuan. Sichuan is a province which is famous for tourism, hotpot and pandas, and I hope all of our friends can come to visit us after this success of the battle. I'm also looking forward to the beautiful North Africa. Thanks. That's all.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Sichuan is a really beautiful city. You know, panda is coming from this city. When you come to Sichuan, it's really necessary to visit the pandas here. Okay, okay. So let's come to Dr. Ali. So can you help have a little bit summary about today's forum, Dr. Ali?
Thank you, Tammy. First of all, thank you very much for this occasion to share with all these experienced colleagues about the management of the pandemic. What I learned today is, if I have to summarize, is that even though the science is the same for everybody, we all read the same articles, we all have access to the same literature, we all do Zoom reunions, but every country has its specifics, and nobody can use the same science the same way. And we obviously don't have the same patients. There is still one question for which I don't have the answer. It's why it was in the panel of questions, why in Africa, in the North Africa especially, we didn't have the catastrophic pandemic that occurred everywhere in the world. Is it the weather? Is it the way we manage it? I don't really know. But what I know is that we took profit from the experience, especially from the Chinese experience, to have a better management. And even it cannot explain the better prognosis of our patient, it's certainly played a role in it. So thank you for all of that. Good luck for the end of the pandemic.
Okay, okay. Thanks so much for Dr. Ali the summary, because we can see actually for North Africa, actually all of you countries doing very good job to counter the COVID-19, to protect your people. So it's very nice to hear all the news here. So I wish all the people will have a better countries, and we can go to the normal life as early as possible. So also thanks for all the doctors coming to this today, Professor Hamlisch, Joseph, Gasila, Mikala, and also Professor Cohen. Professor Cohen, the president of anesthesia of SMA in Morocco. Well, thanks so much for your time for listening. And also other doctors, Farudi and Sumaya Fong, and also all the Chinese experts, Professor Liao, Professor Ding, and Professor Shi, and Dr. Wu, and Dr. Ji. Thanks for all your time and experiences and sharing.